Welcome, everybody. I'm off mute. So just as a reminder, here's what we're trying to create today. We're going to finish this up. We've already created our entire backend. We've made sure everything works. Everything is up and running. But what we're going to do now is we are going to finish our front end, make it all look nice, make sure it's all connected, and we're going to go piece by piece. We have to create this main section that has all books, that has just a displaying all books. We're doing creating a book here. We've got the book title. So this is the book's page itself. And then we can edit a book here should we need to. So the things that we've done, so far is, again, we've created our backend. Our whole backend works. We have all of our routes, all of our models, controller, and config. So everything works there. We've tested it. It's good to go. We started on the front end. We have a couple different components that we've created. We've created a nav. This one actually works, right? We've seen it. We're going to have to build some stuff or kind of make it look a little bit different. But for right now, this is working a-okay. We have created these components. We haven't done anything with them. So that's what we're going to do today. We need our book form. We need our display all books. And then we need to display one book. And then in my app JSX, I've got my nav. So that's going to be persistent throughout. And then we just have our first route, which is display all books. And that's kind of our home route. Cool. Let's go ahead and jump in. I think starting on the book form makes the most sense because it's going to be sort of the heaviest amount of information that we need. There's a few things we know we're going to have to do. And obviously, throughout this whole time, if you guys have any questions, just come off mute or put it in the chat. I have that open on another window, so that way I can make sure that everybody is following along. And if there's any questions, what we'll do is we're going to code up until class time. I'll stop in the middle of it, kind of give an overview of the exam, and then we will finish up whatever we didn't finish. I'll have to give a little bit of a refresher of what we did. And then I'll finish up of whatever we hadn't done yet. Okay. So when we're dealing with our form, there's a few things we know we're going to have to deal with, right? And with forms, we always deal with use state because we need to keep track of that information. So I'm going to say use state. That's from React. We're good to go. And we know that we're going to have to make a call, right? We're going to have some information because it's a post request. We're going to need to send that information to somewhere. Now, we haven't done this before, but we're going to have to use Axios to call our own server. We've kind of done it, but not with our own server we've created, but we're going to have to use it to call our own server. So I'm going to go ahead and just preemptively bring that in. I'm going to say import Axios from Axios. Cool. And I think that should be it, right? We have our book form. We're not doing anything with it yet, but it returns some information. And then this is what we see. Now I'm going to create some state here. And I'm just going to create a book. Now you can separate this out. If you wanted each individual piece of state, you totally can. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say book, set book, oops, book, which is going to have some state. What we can do is we can look up, and what I would say is maybe to bring up your model. And it's okay if you just put it here, it'll go half a page, and we can make sure that we have all the information that we need. So we need a title, great. We need an author. Perfect. We need pages, great. We need a publisher, publish year. And that is not going to be a string, but we're going to put some information here. And then we also need a genre, right? So we're going to say genre. Perfect. And then that should be it. And let's finish this off. Perfect. Great. So that's my state. And I need to, so I can kind of get rid of this. I don't need to do anything with the timestamps. But now that I've checked title, author, pages, publish year, genre, I've got all the criteria that I need. Okay, great. We can handle this. I'm going to go ahead and probably handle our form first, what do you guys think? What should we do? Should we handle the logic first and then build the form out, or should we just build out the form? Okay, Johnny says build the form. Let's do it. So we've got, we can maybe do an H1 that says add book. Let's see, what does it say here? It says create a book. So we'll say that. We'll say create a book. If you were to say like add book and it says create a book, it's not like I'm gonna count off points, but we just want to make sure that we are good to go there. Cool. So I'm going to say form dot, and then what I will do is real quickly, I'm going to go to Bootstrap. I'm going to build this fairly quick. So again, if there's anything you need me to pause for, please just come off mute and let me know. Just because I'd rather build it a little bit quicker. And then if we have to go through class and kind of explain it, then we can do that. Just that way we can get it built. It's a little bit easier. Okay. So I'm going to the documentation. Again, I'm using Bootstrap. The way I did that is I went into my index.html and I added in Bootstrap right here. Just on the base, if you go to Bootstrap, there's this thing called a CDN. And so that allows you to do that and just makes it look a little bit nicer. So if we look at it, we can see form. We don't actually need anything from that, but label is going to be form label, and then class is form control for input. Okay. Great. And then we could do, we could do a div with MB, which again is margin bottom, a level 3 out of 5. So let's do that. So we have this form. Let's get rid of this. We have this form here. Perfect. We don't need an action yet, but we're going to just say dot MB-3, and that's going to create a div. And then I'm going to say, oh, this already has it. Perfect. We love this. Let's change a few things. I'm going to get rid of this right now. Well, actually, we can just keep it and then we can kind of go from there. And so what I can do is let's see if it does the same thing for author. We love Copilot, but it didn't. It did not close out my div. And let's see if it does all of the stuff. Type number. Wow, that's great. We'll walk through it here after we just make sure all this is good to go. Cool. I think this is create a book. Cool. So let's walk through what we just did. We have this form. We need to, as Johnny put in here, we need to have a submit handler like a non-submit. So this action is kind of nullified. We don't need that. So we'll create that here in just a second. Then what we're doing is we have our div here, and what this does is just kind of compartmentalize this input with this label. And so we've got this form label. Again, this is coming from Bootstrap. This is not what you have to do. I would say just try to put it at least on top of one another and make it look a little bit nice. Bootstrap's really easy. Honestly, if you just kind of did what I did and do form label and form control, feel free to just do that on your exam. It's super easy. And then your form's going to look great. And so what this is doing is this is applying a class, a form label. It says title. So that's just our label here. And then we have an input type text, class of form control. Again, that comes from Bootstrap. Now, this is going to have an on change, and we're going to handle it differently. Really, you can see we're doing the same thing every single time, right? Set book, ... author. This is another way to do it, to where we normally, instead of saying this, we say e.target.name, right? Where, and here is just, we know that it's the title. So this is another way you could do it. I might actually just keep it here, just so that way you guys can see that. Because instead of having a on change handler, you can do it this way. But actually, I'm gonna take this off. I am gonna change it, though. I like that it's kind of here. It's just rewriting this in code, right? And so we will change that here in a second. But what this is saying is anytime we change it, basically it's just updating the value. associated in my state. So we have it all for number, and then genre is text. This is number, pages, and publish year or number. That's important to remember. Oh, thank you. That's important to remember because we want the correct data types when we're sending over data. And then we have a button here that is just a button that says create a book. And that's the end of my form. Okay. So let's go ahead and update and change this. We want to change this to where we've got a change handler first and foremost. And so let's do that. We're going to go above my return statement and let's create my change handler. For const, I'm going to say change handler. That's going to take in an event. Then we are just running our set book. And if you remember, what we're doing is we are spreading out all the values currently there. So that way, as it's changing, because this is continuously running, we want to make sure that it's not overriding the material that it's already saved, right? So if we've already written a title and we get to author, we don't want it to overwrite title. And so that's what it is doing, is spreading out the values we currently have. Then it's going and saying e.target.name. That's really important because it is this value here. So again, remember, you have to, if you're going to do it this way, you have to make sure that you have this attribute of name and it matches whatever you have in state. If I were to have two L's here, it's going to create a new value where title would be empty always. And then if I had an L here, they would create a new one. So it's going to take this name and then create its value of whatever the event is. So we want to make sure that these are always matching. This name portion matches whatever's in my state. Really, really, really important. And then let's go ahead and change this. I'm just going to do this for all of them. And we'll call this change handler. Perfect. Great. Cool. So now we're handling all of my changes, which is great. Now I need a submit handler. So for my on submit, I need it to do something. So I'm say submit handler. That doesn't exist yet. So let's go ahead and make it. So we're going to say const submit handler. Now, this is where it's going to be a little bit different than what we've ever sort of done before. So we want to make sure that we are kind of handling this correctly. Cool. So what we want is we are going to first kind of prevent default. Again, that always we want to make sure we have our data. Wow, this is crazy that this already knows it all. We're then running an axios.posts and we're putting the route that my server has. And so what this is looking for is in my, let me make this smaller. Just close this. Here, it's looking for where's my post route and what is this, right? Because that's what we're calling. So we're saying we want to package this data and we want to send that to my database, right? Or to my endpoint, if you will. And this is my endpoint, localhost 8000/API/books. So we need to make sure that this matches that, right? And it has the correct one. If this was singular book, it's going to say 404. This does not exist. So we need to make sure that it does match. The thing that we're also sending with that post request, if you think about when we did it in Postman, we had a body and then we went in and we did raw JSON and we sent some information. But what we're sending is our state, our piece of a state that we have that should be all of our book, right? Cool. Cool. Then everything is good to go. We get our response, or we console log our response, if you will. And then if not, we can console log our error. We'll build this out in a little bit. I just kind of want to get everything working, and then we'll work on some other functionality where maybe we have some validations that are showing. There's some different things that we can do. Maybe we want to clear out the form after it's been submitted. you know, kind of wherever we want to go here. And then what we can do is we can then navigate, right? Because once it creates a book, we can actually build that out, because we can say once we create a book, we either want to have an empty page here, or we can navigate back to this. So as of right now, I don't know that we actually need to do that. Okay, so let's save this. We've got our state. We've got our change handler. We're keeping track of it. We've got our submit handler. That's great. We have our form. Now, we have to create our route, right? And so when do we want this to show? So if I go to my route, what should we do? Maybe we should, we could say like books. If we're thinking about kind of how we want to build upon this, and we'll change this, I think, here in a second, but what can we build upon? Maybe we want to say books/create. And so anytime we go to books/create, then we are going to go to our form here. So we come into my element, right? Because here's the path. What element do I want to show? I want to show my book form. Make sure that it gets brought in up there. It does. Okay. Great. We're here. Everything should be working. And let's spin this up and just go see our form and see what's happening. So let me open up my terminal, bring it over here so you guys can see it. So I'm going to CD into my client. Make sure I have everything. Okay, great. I'm saying npm run dev. Good to go on localhost 5173. Perfect. So we have this bookly home and create book. We haven't sort of fixed that. We can go ahead and do that here in just a second. Let me actually go ahead and see if that changes anything. Yeah, perfect. Cool. So we just put a pipe and then a little bit of a space after. Cool. So we have bookly, we have that. But if I say /books/create, cool. We get this entire thing. I'm actually going to make, there's one edit I'm going to make. So here you can see with Bootstrap, what it does is it fills the entire, it'll fill the entire space because it's dynamic, right? So that way, if I go like that, it can change. But a quick way to do that is, or to fix that, is in my form, I can give a class name. Class name. And it's going to be, let's see, I can't remember what it is. It's medium 6. Let's see. Nope. Let's go to the documentation. I've had a pretty foggy brain today. I can't think of things. Medium call. I think that's, we're saying that we want the columns to be medium and 6, I think. No? Is it call medium 6? Yeah, okay. And then I'm going to say offset 3. So what that's going to do is that's going to offset it. Remember, in Bootstrap, it's broken up into 12 columns across your page. And so what this did was this was saying, hey, my columns, there's medium, there's large, and there's small. Medium is just kind of your basic. If you wanted it smaller, you can do that. And if you wanted it large, you'd say LG or SM for small. And then we're saying we want to take up 6 of the 12 columns. So that's roughly about half of them, right? Or not roughly, that is half of the space, right? Then what I can say is offset 3. And you can think about it as there's 3 columns, and we're saying start on the 4th column, right? So 1, 2, 3, we're missing that, we're offsetting that. So that's what's going to get me in the middle. I could have probably said MX Auto or something like that, which also would get me in the middle. But this makes a little bit of sense. I might make this smaller just because it doesn't need to be 6. Yeah, that's fine. And maybe I'll just do offset 4. And that gives me a third. I'm starting, this would be 100% of the page where I have a third of it here. This is taking up a third of it, and this is taking up a third of it. I'm going to put this in here. Just that way it's with me, and it says create book. Okay. I am right now probably breaking a rule where you don't really want to do a ton of styling, I would say, to start. You want to focus on the functionality. You want to make sure, okay, this functionality is good to go. And then you style it, make it look nice, because again, I don't really care about styling as long as it functions. It's going to be a-okay. So me even taking this time to like, oh, put this pipe here and do that. You know, I feel fine that we're going to be okay on time, but that could be an issue in the future. Okay. So let's test this out. So here's kind of our first show of I've got a server running. What I'm going to do, and you can do this a couple different ways. I personally like to do a new window. And then I'm going to say MERN. I'm going to say CD to week 5, lecture 3, books, server. Cool. I like to have, let me make it bigger for you guys. I like to have 2 different servers running this way, to where I've got 2, usually I have one on one screen or 2 of them on the screen. So that way I can kind of see them just like this, taking up my entire screen. And what I want to say is, oh man, I'm blanking. I have had the worst brain fog today. NodeMon, sorry. Server.js. Okay. So now both are running, and you have to have both to run, right? If I were to try to submit a form and the server's not running, it's not going to take in my request. It's going to be an error. So make sure you have both running. This is always a thing when you're testing it, especially because both of these constantly update. So even if you're adding in your code, you have to be careful. If things aren't working or it's not updating, my first step would always to make sure your server didn't crash. Because though NodeMon, even if you put the right code, it should be constantly listening. Sometimes the code is so broken because you're just writing it right and it makes sense that it actually cancels your server. And so you're going to have to spin it back up again. But now we have both of these here. Let me pull up MongoDB. I think I still have it. Sorry, guys. I had to wipe my entire computer yesterday. It has been the worst having to re-download everything. Let me pull up MongoDB. Cool. So what I want to do is we currently have these books in here. Let's check them out. I have House in the Cerulean Sea, The Alchemist, which is so incredible. Clean Code by Uncle Bob, and then Mistborn. Great. So let's try to actually create a new book. So can somebody give me a title of a book?
The Poppy War.
The Poppy War. Who is the author?
R.F. Kuang. That's spelled Kuang.
How many pages?
I think it's 500.
Whoa, nice. Published year. Do you happen to know that?
2016.
Crushing it. And then genre.
Historical fiction fantasy.
I love that. Historical fiction fantasy. Perfect. Let's create a book. Okay. So I clicked create book. We don't have anything to happen after that, but let's go ahead and go into my inspect tool and let's see. We got an Axios error. Axios request from origin 517 has been blocked by cores. So let's go in here. So it's giving me a CORS error. And in my servers where I do this, let's try just putting localhost. Because I'm reading that error. Let's save this. I'm reading this error, right? And it says access at localhost 8000/API/books from origin localhost has been blocked. Response to pre-flight request doesn't pass control check. The access control header has a value of this that is not equal to the supplied origin. Though 127.0.0.1 is localhost, let's just try it maybe. See if both servers are running. Yep, we're good to go. Let's try it now. Okay, so we have a status 200. So it didn't like the 127.0.0.1, which is weird because it's the same thing as localhost. But good thing to note, right? That we need to have localhost here. I don't think technically you even have to have an origin. I think you can just put CORS and that just is fine. This is a little bit safer because you're saying this is specifically the server that we're looking into and no other servers could access it. But if you got rid of this portion, you'd be okay. You could just put CORS. And kind of moment of truth is this thing never works. But if I were to go to open up Postman, Postman is opening up. Eventually. We know that my server is running and I know that I can do API/books, and that's going to give me all my books. So if I send and I get this, we should see it. Here we are. Cool. So we were able to, through our form, let's go back through this code here. Let's get rid of that and that and that. So what we're doing is we're getting all this information, and as we typed it, it's updating my state. Then what's happening is when we press submit, when we press our create book, it goes to my submit handler or my on submit. And we said, okay, we have this submit handler. ePrevent default, we want to keep track of this. We're using Axios to ping our other server. So again, both of them have to be running. Then we're saying, send this request. We're making a request to this endpoint, this API/books, and it's a post request. And go ahead and give it book. Go ahead and give it this piece of information, this object that we have. Then it will either console log a response, which it did, right? And our console log was 200. Okay, we're good to go. This was our response. Or even we have data, we could do response.data and it would give us all this information. And if there was an error, then it would catch it and it would give us that error, which it did, right? It gave us an Axios error and saying, hey, error on the network. That doesn't make sense. So, which is great. That means that we are able to actually send some information. But as you could tell, this isn't the best sort of kind of thing, because now you're like, well, what am I doing next? Right? This, I've already created this. I don't want to send it again. If I was reading this, I would think, okay, maybe, yeah, you know, what do I do here? So I'm going to show you how we can wipe this. And then what we're really going to do is we're just going to navigate back to the home page. But before we do that, I want to show you how we could wipe this. So that way, you know, if you wanted to keep the form here, if you wanted to show them all with the form on it, that it could kind of do that. So what we can do if we wanted to do that is in our then. What we can do is because we're going to do more than one thing, right? We can't just have this singular console log. And we can implicitly return. So we do that. Let's just make sure. This is good to go. Perfect. So what we can do is we've done that. Then there's a couple different things. If I was going to show all of this information on the same sort of page, then maybe I'd have some state that I want to set, you know, like all shows and add that. We're not doing that right now, but here's where I would do that, right? But what we can also do is, since this has been sent and it's already in my database, we're good to go. What we can do is we can say set book and just do author equals this, and just reset it to empty. So what this is doing is saying, hey, great, if we've already sent it to the database and everything works, then we're good to go. I need one more curly bracket, and yeah, there we go. Then we're good to go. Okay, cool. Reset these values here. But if we are going to do this, then what I need to do is I need to, in my form, go in here and start saying value equals, and then I'm going to say book dot title. Now what this is going to do is this will, it's not going to affect us. And by default, if we're typing on it, that's what the value is. But if, yeah, Johnny, exactly. If we want it to read this, and once it resets the book, it's going to change those values, then yeah, we're going to go in and we're just going to do this value equals, and then we're going to take that book dot, whatever it is. And so in this case, we'll do book dot author. In this case, we'll do pages. And this will be publish year. And then lastly, we'll say genre. Cool. And so what this will do is now, once we are done and we've submitted it, if everything works okay, we'll still console log for right now. And then we're going to set our book. And we're going to set the book to empty, and then we'll be A-okay. And then it'll automatically do it. So let's go in. Let's go make sure, especially after I do some sort of change like this, I'm going to go make sure that my terminals are running. Establish connection. This is still running. Cool. So we're good to go. Let's go ahead. And does somebody want to give me a new book? Yeah, exactly, Johnny. That's great. That's the value that we're going to want. Like I said, there might be a more advanced topic of pre-populating our edit page. It's exactly what we're going to do. So we're just going to take that value and then we're going to add it. So, but can somebody give me another book? We'll do meditations. Marcus Aurelius. I don't know how you spell Aurelius. Nope. All right, I'll just do meditations. Aurelius. Aurelius. Oops. Marcus Aurelius, there is, let's say 160 pages. I don't know, we'll say 300. And then we'll just say philosophy. I spelled that incorrectly. Oh no, I spelled it right. Good for me. Okay. Philosophy. So if we create book, now you can see that if I inspect and I console log, we got this object back. Okay, we're good to go. Oh, book validation failed. Let's check this out. Book validation failed. Must be at least 1800. Ooh, okay. So that's okay. We can look at how we can handle that here in just a second too. Actually, this is a great time to really look at how we can handle these validations. So this is our validations from our backend, right? And so these are our actual Mongoose validations. We wrote this, publish year, must be at least 1800. And we want to make sure that our user can see that. So what I can do, and this is great that we have this, is I've got this whole object that came back, right? This was my response object. And in my data, I've got an errors. And then with that, it is publish year. And so what I can do is I can create some state up here to make sure that we are keeping track of my errors. So I'm going to say const, and I'm going to say errors, set errors. This is going to be an object of what we're dealing with. Then what we'll do is in here, instead of just console logging my error, because that doesn't really do much, what I can do is I can say set errors to error dot response dot data dot errors. And so what that'll do is it'll grab the information and it will set that in my errors. So let's check this. Let's try running that again. Make sure our server's running. Book validation failed. See, because it failed, my server's not running. Oh no, it is. Okay. So let's go back and let's try to run it. So meditations. Pages 160, 300. 300 is way too early, I think. Philosophy. Great book. Okay, nothing happened, which we anticipate. Console log, we have this. Okay. But if I go to state, let's see if it went into my state. Book form, I have state author. Let's see. That errors. So what we can do is let's just do this. This is how I would handle this. Is I expect that to work, but it didn't. So first off, let's see, we had this issue with Brittany where let's just first console log these. Let's first console log these and then see what's going on, right? Let's see if this is in the correct area or if we have to go even deeper. So let's run it back. There's an error. Let's check my terminal. Okay. Expected, got that. Where is that? Click on it. Okay. Maybe is that it? Okay, so we're good to go here. We're still running. Let's run it back. So we'll say meditations. I'm just gonna put Marcus because I know it's gonna fail anyway, so it doesn't matter. I need to do that. And then let's say 300 and then test. Okay. Just go back in. Let's go to my state. Still nothing. So let's go to my console. Failed server, failed object. Because this should console log error response data errors. So it shouldn't be doing all of this. It should just be doing this portion. So sometimes I would say it's just Control C just to make sure we're not going crazy. I would absolutely encourage you, if you think your code is working, you're like, this should be working, and it's not, then it's always a good idea, instead of being like, wow, this should be working and it's not, just turn your servers on and off sometimes for some reason that works. So I'm just gonna say test D 1, 2, 3, 300 test. Okay, so we still got we gotta what is going on? That worked. No, it didn't. Because that's giving me a 200, saying, yep, that was good. The status was okay, but we did have errors. But I'm curious as to shouldn't be going in here. Because it shouldn't give me a then because it's not correct. See, because give me this. Min, publish year, 300, right? Try it one more time.
Well, I think it said your published year, your validations must be year 1800.
I'm sorry, you cut out quite a bit. Maybe it's my end. I'm sorry. Can you?
Oh, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you a little. Yeah, I can hear you much better now.
Okay. I think the book validation said your published year had to be at least 1800. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it should.
Okay, so that's what I saw on the console.
Well, it's not. Nothing showed up in our console. Oh, duh. I'm so stupid. It showed up here. That's not where it's running. Right? It should show
Okay,
up.
that's where I just saw the validation error right there. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so that's there, but this is running from my front end. So see how what's happening is I'm getting a status 200,
Right.
but I'm still getting an error.
Okay, and that's just for insert.
But it should kick if that doesn't work,
Right.
then that should kick me to my catch.
Definitely. Can we take, I just jumped in here late, so sorry, but I'm following you. Can we take one more look at your promise? Okay, dot then, so we're setting book. Okay. So we should be in the catch there. Yeah, error dot response dot data dot errors. That's where it, yeah, that's the keys in the object. Okay. And it's still passing.
Yeah, it's
Hmm.
still coming in here. So if I were to like console.log response or just in and I run this, even though I don't do anything, and I still get all of these. If I still come here, I get all these errors.
Okay, maybe we can console log. Okay, so on 24, can we console log res.data and just kind of get into it right
Yes,
away?
that's what we're getting right here. So if I just console log res, this is what it was giving. And so it says status okay, Axios handlers. But it still has this errors, which should be my catch. So if I go to, let's check this. Controllers. Yeah. Respond with JSON error. Create book. So I'm console logging the error that's happening on my end. Right? That's why we're getting these console logs. Like if I just
Right.
say, instead of that, I just say console log. I save this. And I come here, refresh, I create book. I get the in the then, but I get there's an error. So my backend is sending a catch.
Yeah, maybe we can assign it some status codes.
I think that might be, I'm just confused on why the front end is handling that as like a then.
Yeah, like why is it making it all the way to the catch rather
Mhm.
than,
Well, that's fine, but it should be just responding with a catch, right? And so whenever it gets a response here, it should go into there. And it's not, it's going into here. So no matter what I send is going into my then.
okay. Gotcha.
So we could try adding in some status codes into my controller. So instead of saying, I just want to create one book, instead of just saying something like error, I could say, see if that changes anything. We're good to go. Refresh. Good to go here. Okay. Gave me that. And it's saying 500 air, which that is not doing. There's an error. Okay. So by just changing that status code, what that did was that allowed my front end, I guess, to detect that, hey, there's an error. So what you can do is when we're dealing with validations, what this status code is just the status is what it sounds like. There's status codes. We've talked about them like 404, 400, 200 that let you know the status of a response of whatever. And so what we can do is we could do a res.status. And what I'm assuming is happening, I'm not completely sure, but what I'm assuming is happening is when we actually put the status code for some reason, then this is understanding and saying, okay, it's not in here because I got a different status than the 200, right? By default, we weren't putting anything. And so I'm wondering if it was just saying, oh, I was able to send the request. But because it got not a 200, but a 500, then maybe it goes into here. And we just were able to console log all of our errors. And we were able to see that right here, right? Where it says this guy action is authors required, genres required, title, blah, 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 blah. So what I can do, great job, Garrett, with thinking about that. So what I can do is I can say set errors equals, let's see, I got an extra parenthesis here. Perfect. Now I can do this set errors. If I come here, let me cancel this, refresh. create book, nothing happens. I'm going to inspect. I have a console, failed to load, server with a status 500. I'm no longer console logging the errors, but if I go to book form, I should see, here we go. I've got this title required message. I have all of my errors right here, right? And so now that's in my state, it's persistent. So what I can do is I can go in and I can actually grab my information. I can go into in the same way that we've done kind of our own conditional rendering. I can do that same thing here, right? Where maybe under the input, I could say something like this, errors.title. So if there is something called errors.title, which errors is, again, my object, right? And we're saying if the dot title key exists, and that is only going to exist if it sends us the errors, then I want to create a p tag with a class name of text danger. That is a bootstrap thing. I believe it's just bootstrap. To make it red, it might just be a default thing, but danger is definitely a bootstrap thing. To make it red, and then I want to put the error message here. And if not, I can either put empty quotes or I could just put null. That works just fine. And so now if I were to come back, refresh, and I create book, it says title is required because the title is required. So we can do that for the other ones. Great job, Garrett, on thinking about the status code. And I think Johnny put that in there as well. So we'll do author.
Yeah, sure.
We'll do errors dot pages. Do errors publish year, and then we'll do genre. Perfect. Cool. Again, all we're doing is we're doing a ternary operator. We're saying errors.pages. What that's saying is, does that exist, right? And it only exists if it's created whenever we have some errors right here, and we're setting those errors. And then if it does exist, again, show the error message, and if not, null, meaning you don't have to put anything. So if we come here, refresh, make sure that's saved. Yep. Create book. All of these happen. Right? But if I put test and that passes my minimum of 3 and I put create book, you can see that it no longer gets the error because, hey, this one passes. Publish year is required, genre is required. But if I do something like this, I just put T, you can see that I still have, so first and foremost, it's required, right? And so that's the first error that we're getting, and that's coming from our backend. That's coming from Mongoose. In our model, we say this is required. And then secondly, if that, if they do have it, but it still doesn't follow our minimum pages, if I just put 9, it's, oops, not 98. And I say this, it's going to say page must be at least. So it's going to keep running down and saying, okay, it must be this, it must be this, it must be this. So that way you can get a little bit more defiant with that. Cool. Any questions? I'm sorry for the kind of confusion there, but are there any questions on what we just did? This is sort of the main portion of what the exam is going to be like. Like this form and making sure that we can send data back and forth is probably the most challenging portion of the front end. To an extent, we just have to get stuff to show now. That's not very hard. Any questions? You guys put a 1 in the chat. This makes sense.
This is different from the validations that we learned at the beginning in React.
So these are the validations. So what we're doing, great question. So it's the same thing, but instead of us creating our own front end validations, where we could do that, right? We could, in theory, and I hope I don't confuse anybody here, we could create another function, just maybe called validations, right? That we could run prior to this. So we don't even, maybe we got pinged or charged every time we hit our API, right? What we could do is we could create a validations sort of thing where you could say something like, const form validations, pass in the book, and then we could kind of do a couple things where we can say, all right, is valid is true, saying, yes, this is a valid, what this is doing is this is setting this up to say, okay, we're going to assume that it's good to go. Then we're creating book errors and we're saying, all right, and we're creating our own validations, making sure everything's good. Yep. Creating our own validations, right? To where we're saying if the book.title.length is less than 3, then I want to create a new key in my book errors called title must be at least 3 characters. And then I'm setting it to false, right? And so it's going to run through all of these. These are your front end validations. Cough, cough. This might be an advanced thing. You have your front end validations. And then we're saying, all right, set errors to book errors. And then we're returning is valid. Now, what this is going to do is this is either going to return true or false, right? And so what we can do before we even post is I can say if, and then I could say form validations book. Then maybe I want to do this. Expected this. Press in book. Missing a parenthesis somewhere. Not sure why it's not liking that. I'm gonna read my errors. It's saying remove the declaration of the unused form validations variable. But we're saying, hey, if this is true, then I want to do all of this. I'm missing what's be the problem? Oh. Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking in Python. You have to put your condition in parentheses. Python, you don't. Sorry, I was like, what is wrong with this? This should make sense. So here's my if statement. And what this is going to do is it's going to run my form validations. And then what that's going to do is that is going to check all of these. And it's going to either give me true or false because I'm returning is valid. Remember, it starts at true. But if any of the validations come back that it doesn't meet the criteria, it creates them as false. And so what this is saying is, hey, if this is true, it's met our validations. Okay, then go ahead and ping my API. What I could then do is just say something like, I've already set errors. And so maybe I want to just kind of leave it. Let's try it. Let's see what happens if I do that. Refresh, create book. Nothing happens. Inspect. Let's see what my console says. Okay, nothing happened. Because it's not doing anything. Because I'm either sending this or I'm not, right? Let's say console.log after the Axios post. Let's test that out. After the Axios post. Yeah. So what this is doing is this is saying, hey, either this matches and this is good, right? Whether it's true, but if it's true, then we'll go ahead and send it and we'll do whatever we need. But if it's not, then we'll then we will just not even send that. So this is what we would call a front-end validation. That is an advanced thing. You don't have to do that. But to answer your question, the things that we did in class was something like this, where we had a ternary. We created some validations just like this, and we had a ternary operator. What we're also doing now is saying, okay, like if I were to get rid of this form validations, I'm going to console log it out so that way you guys can have it if you want it. Because obviously this code will go on GitHub, but I'm not going to make us have that. Cool. But what this is saying is cool. If it was valid, then go ahead and send it. And if not, don't send it. But we are good to go. I think I need one more. Oh no. Yeah, we're good. Cool. Does that make sense? Did that confuse anybody? Clear as mud. Any questions on what this was doing? This is basically just preemptively saying, you know, if you were getting pinged every time you were trying to hit the database, let's say every request you had was, you know, 0.001 cents. Somebody keeps trying to do it, eventually that's going to cost you money. This is just preventing them from even being able to touch our database first. We're saying, hey, it's kind of a pre-check. It's like kind of clear if you've ever gone to the airport, a TSA pre-check. It's like we've already checked this stuff, so it's a little bit, we know it should be good. We trust it to go through. You still have the other ones as well, right? So even if they, you know, even if one of your errors doesn't totally make sense or whatever, you still can, if that makes sense, you can still, you still have another protection, another sort of way to do it. Because your model is still going to do that. Okay. Are there any questions on that? Again, I'll keep this in here if you guys want to have access to it. You guys can use this code for your exam. Absolutely feel free. Okay. I'm going to stop there just real quickly. I'm going to stop the recording, and this will be considered our office hour recording, and then I'll do the second one.